Hello, freak bitches. I want to talk for a little bit about cryotherapy because this is something that I emailed you when there was a disturbing article that was sort of poo-pooing the benefits of cryotherapy, and the article was, I thought it was really poorly done, poorly researched, and it was also they studied really subjective things like how sore you felt after exercise and whether or not it benefited from that. But there are real positive benefits of cryotherapy that are measurable.
Yes, and that have been measured. Well, first of all, that article that you're referring to from that whatever website it was, but the article was
Steve Novella is a guy, and I think what he did is he rushed to put this article out because that woman died in Las Vegas from cryotherapy, and it was a really tragic incident. She was by herself. There's two different types of cryotherapy. One of the things we should point out, first of all, I don't have any, as I've been accused of this, I should just say right now, I don't have any vested interest in cryotherapy. I don't own any of it. I don't make any money from it. Nothing. I enjoy the benefits of it, and I use it. But this woman who did it, she did the type, there's two kinds. One of them, it goes from the neck down. So you stand in this booth, your head is above, breathing in normal oxygen, but below you is liquid nitrogen. You can't breathe that stuff in. That's why your head is not under. If you do breathe that stuff in, you don't have any oxygen, you'll black out, and that's what happened to her. She did it by herself. It was poorly set up, and apparently she was quite short. So her head was kind of below the limit where you're supposed to be. So she was breathing in the liquid nitrogen, and she fell asleep and blacked out. See,
she went to one of those type?
Yes.
I thought she was in like
No.
the full-on.
No. The full-on ones are much rarer. And what the full-on ones do is they super cool the air with the nitrogen. So the air itself is pumped in really cold.
That's what I did.
Yes, that's what you did. And that's what we're going to do today, too, if you have the time.
I loved it.
Okay, let's do it
I loved
again.
it.
That one, you can breathe in. It's just fucking unbelievably cold. Okay, so the one that she did, she set it up by herself, which you're never supposed to do. You're always supposed to have supervision. So it wasn't whether or not, I mean, she's the only person I've ever heard of that's died from this, and it's a horrible tragedy.
Was she committing suicide?
No.
It was
she was just worked there. And sometimes women will, they'll put their face under it because they want the effects of a cryofacial, because cryofacial has been shown to improve collagen and tightens your skin up.
Cryotherapy actually prevents, it inhibits enzymes that break down collagen called collagenases. And that's actually part of the reason it helps with arthritis, because collagenases break down collagen, and they break down the tendons, collagen around the tendons and stuff, and it can cause arthritic pain. So it would make sense why you'd want to do something cryo, because it would have an effect on your skin.
Yeah, women love it when they get their face done, apparently. They get, or vain men too, or any man. Well, you don't have to be vain to want collagen. But the point being, that article came out and all these people were saying, oh, see, I told you cryotherapy was bullshit. I'm like, oh my God, what a piss poor article. And it was all talking about soreness. And one of the things that he said that really drove me crazy was you'd get just as much benefit from a cool down and a stretch after a workout. I'm like, tell that to these fucking people that I see that go there all the time, that do it twice a day because they have severe arthritis, and it's the only thing that's given them any form of freedom of movement of their hands. Like, I know a bunch of people that go there that have had some pretty debilitating arthritis, and this has given them relief where nothing else was giving it to them, other than like pretty severe pharmaceutical drugs or ibuprofen at high levels, or what you were talking about. Like, there's a lady that goes to my thing where she was raving about how she can finally stretch her hands out. Like, her hands had been like locked in this position for years.
Yeah, it has. I mean, the cold itself is a hormetic stressor that is activating a variety of anti-inflammatory pathways, antioxidant pathways, and it's also, last time I think on the podcast we talked about it increases norepinephrine. Well, norepinephrine itself, so cryotherapy and cold water immersion are two forms of cold exposure. Cryotherapy, just 2 minutes at like a minus 180 Fahrenheit, can increase norepinephrine twofold. That's, twofold over what you were before you went in. And norepinephrine, in addition to the brain benefits we were talking about, how it makes you feel good, how it helps with learning, it also is a very potent anti-inflammatory. So it inhibits the production of TNF alpha, which is it's kind of like in arthritis, TNF alpha is kind of like going haywire. You're making too much TNF alpha. And what happens is TNF alpha is a signaling molecule to your immune cells that says, hey, there's an infection here, because that's normally what happens when you release TNF alpha is because there's some bacteria or something that you need to kill. And so your immune cells, all they see is the signal. They don't know what's causing it. They don't know that it's because your gut cells and your immune cells in your gut are seeing bacteria because of your poor diet or whatever. And so that's getting into the bloodstream and causing chronic inflammation. It doesn't know that. All it knows is that this means there's a threat. And so they start to increase the production of your immune cells make hypochlorite, which is like bleach. So you're making bleach in your body to kill things, and that's happening chronically. That's going to cause some tissue damage. It's going to cause pain. They also make hydrogen peroxide. You make that, and your immune cells will make that. So cryotherapy inhibits the signaling molecule so that your immune cells quiet down, because now they're not seeing that signal that says, "Come on, hey, fire up, fire up." It's not there. So that's a good thing to inhibit TNF alpha. And like I said, with the collagenases as well. But there are so many. I just spent 2 weeks just researching and reading. I've been doing some cold exposures, like cold shower and also jumping in the ocean, ice bath. And I really liked the cryotherapy that I did last time we were here. And, so I've been very interested in it, like understanding why you feel so good. And so I did some reading on it. And there's so many different positive hormetic benefits from doing cryotherapy. So you have, the anti-inflammatory part. And this also, it's been shown that doing like 10 sessions of cryotherapy in a row, it increases the expression of glutathione reductase by twofold, and another glutathione-related enzyme, glutathione peroxidase, by like 68%. And these enzymes, like you could be taking all the liposomal glutathione you want, like it's not going to matter if you don't have the enzymes active to use it. So you could take liposomal glutathione, and that's great. You're increasing, you make glutathione inside of your cells, but we can't make as much of it as we get older. But if you take it and you don't have the enzymes that use it to actually do the good stuff active, then it doesn't matter. So cryotherapy was shown to activate 2 different glutathione-related enzymes, which is pretty awesome.
So it enhances your body's ability to absorb glutathione.
No, it doesn't enhance your body's ability to absorb it. It enhances your body's ability to use it.
So if you're taking it, liposomal glutathione, and then you're using cryotherapy, it would enhance it?
So what I'm saying is that the liposomal glutathione that you take, all that does is increase glutathione inside of your cells. Glutathione inside of your cells does nothing without enzymes that use it to basically sequester damaging inflammatory things.
And the cryotherapy
activates the enzymes that use it. So it's like, great, I have all this glutathione sitting around in my cells that I've been taking, and I also now have the enzymes that use it to do good stuff now are being turned on.
Okay.
But what was very interesting is that it took like multiple sessions before those got active, like 10 to 20. 10 in one, at least 10. And then the other study was 20. So,
and was it consecutively?
10 days in a row. Yeah, 10 days in a row. But the first day I didn't do it. So that was also very interesting.
So it's almost like your body's saying, okay, this crazy fuck is going to do this.
It's an
all
adaptive
the time.
response.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, your body's preparing for war. It's like it's stressful. It's a stressful response. The other thing that's really cool that we didn't talk about last time on the podcast is the thermogenic effect. When you release norepinephrine, so that's, I keep going back to that because it's like you can't refute that. Steve Novella, no one, no debunker, no skeptic, no, I don't care who you are. You can't. It's consistent in every type of cold exposure. Period. It's consensus. You release norepinephrine.
Well, there always seems to be some sort of a rationalization with a lot of the debunking, like whether it's the benefits of exercise, whether it's the benefits of cryotherapy. It's almost like a rationalization for not doing it. It's like you're looking for an excuse to not do it, and not really very objective.
Yes.
That was which was disturbing about it. It's like, this is like you're poo-pooing something that's offering people great. Yeah.
Yeah. It was clear. I mean, especially after I did the 2 weeks of research. I mean, I think there's a kind of mentality when sometimes people like to think I'm a debunker, and I'm not. I am intentionally, like, because if you get in this mentality of always debunking something, it's like this spiral, and you can't see the good. Like, you can't keep an open mind to like get past your like what's in your box that and that's very dangerous.
Yeah.
I think that, and
it's
I think
intellectual blind spot.
It is, and there are a lot of scientists that I know that are very smart, extremely smart, but they are in that loop where it's like just they have to debunk and criticize. Like, and it's like, you know, at some point, huge discoveries are made by like connecting the dots and like getting past that. Like, I mean, you have to be critical. Being critical is very important, but you also like, I think there's a certain threshold where you just start to like, you know, you get to this like spiral. But
well, what was infuriating about this is the data's out there. This is not like, it's not like there's no data. It's like he made a cursory examination of the evidence, and what he chose to focus on was so subjective. He focused on a study that tested muscle soreness post-exercise with cryotherapy.
Well, actually, the study that he referred to is a meta-analysis, and it was subjective, but it actually came to the conclusion that there were benefits. However, it said more studies need to be done because there wasn't large enough sample sizes and the quality of data was poor because there were not double-blinded placebo-controlled clinical trials. And I have to say to you, so they're actually, what he recited in that article, there was a positive effect of the cryo. But the problem is that because they followed it up with, oh, well, it's poor quality, basically poor science. The reality is that you can't do a double-blinded, placebo-controlled trial with cryotherapy. Like you're going to be cold, and you're going to be put in this chamber where there's like cold, or you're not, and you're going to know if you're not cold. You know. So, anyways, I thought that was ridiculous. So I was like, whatever. I'm in Oregon. I'm going to read about this stuff just because I know I've experienced it. There's definitely something going on. And one of the things that happens is the norepinephrine, and when you release that norepinephrine, it activates a pathway inside of your cells that basically it causes your energy metabolism to ramp up because you're trying to generate heat. Your body is saying, I don't want to die. I need to make heat. And so a couple of ways it can do that. One, it can shiver. And shivering is when your muscles start to contract, and that it requires energy for your muscles to like twitch. It's very it's not very thermodynamically favorable, so it's not a good way to generate heat, but you generate heat because you have to like ramp up to twitch. But then what happens after you've been exposed, and actually this happened to me because we did the cryo twice. The first time I did it, I was shivering. Like the entire time I was shivering. It was like really crazy because I've never shivered like that in my life. But the second time I went in, I did not shiver. And after reading about it, what happens is your body quickly adapts. So you adapt, and what happens is non-shivering thermogenesis. So the norepinephrine causes your mitochondria, which are the energy-producing little organelles inside of your cells. Well, it causes them in your adipose tissue to like get activated. And it does this by increasing the expression of a gene called UCP1, which basically freaks your mitochondria out because your mitochondria are kind of like batteries. They're charged. They have a negative charge on the inside and a positive charge on the outside. Well, UCP1 totally uncouples that so that there's no more charge. And that charge is very important because when that charge is there, your body knows, okay, I've been making energy, because the way you make the charge is by making energy. So when the charge goes away, your body's like, oh my God, I've got no energy. So it just starts to ramp up fat metabolism. So it does that, and you start to make more mitochondria. So you're making more mitochondria in your fat cells, and this is often called brown fat. So you can actually, the reason it's called brown fat is because when you look at a fat cell under the microscope, if it has more mitochondria, then it looks brown. So you actually start to burn fat, and you have this thermogenic, because you're burning fat, it's creating heat as a byproduct. So you're warming your body, but it has this nice side effect of burning fat, which people like. And the more you expose yourself to the cold, the more you're browning your fat, the more you're increasing those mitochondria in your fat, which means the next time you're in the cold, you can tolerate it longer. So people that have been exposing themselves to cold, like yourself, when you're doing the cryo, often, you actually can tolerate the colder for longer periods of time because you have more mitochondria in your fat cells, and this allows you to then generate more heat. So, and this has been shown in people that have been exposed to cold, that they've been shown to increase their brown adipose tissue by like 38% if they're exposed to 10 days of 50-degree air, like outside air, just regular air.
That's it? 50 degrees all it takes?
All day, 10 days.
Wow.
So like 6 hours a day out in like, New York in the, pre-winter, fall, I don't know, something like that, being out there for 6 hours for 10 days in a row, men were able to increase their brown adipose tissue by like 38% or something like that.
That's why people from the East Coast or from the Northeast that move to like California and then they go back during the winter, they go, oh, my blood got too thin. Well, there really is like a physical factor of your body not being accustomed to dealing with cold weather.
You adapt, and that's what brown adipose tissue, and that's really when how cold got really popularized, because people wanted to use it as a hack to lose weight. So they were like, oh, if I do these cold showers, I use it I for the brain benefits, because I notice I feel really good, and also more focused. So I like that, and a lot of people I've talked to have felt the same way. But then I think the other part of this article was the effects of it blunting some of the strength training. And, I talk about this in this report that I wrote, or in the podcast that I released on, and it's so complicated. I had to like sit there and literally just read for like 2 weeks to try to figure it out, because, the problem is that exercise is a hormetic stress. Cold is a hormetic stress. So exercise itself, you need some of the inflammation, you need the bad stuff to get the good stuff. That's how it works.
Right.
But the inflammation that's happens while you're exercising and up to 1 hour after. 1 hour after, that's when the whole hormetic response kicks in. And this has been shown in multiple studies. 1 hour seems to be when the anti-inflammatory response kicks in. So you've generated the inflammation, and then now you've got the anti-inflammatory effects. If you do a cold exposure within that hour after exercising, it's possible you may blunt some of the inflammatory effects that the exercise is inducing, because the cold is activating anti-inflammatory genes too early. Now, I don't know that for certain, but I do know that the study that showed, there was one study that showed strength training, if you did it, if you did cryotherapy immediately after it was actually cold water immersion, which is not the same as the cryo chamber, that it blunted some of the anabolic signaling, and so there was like some of the muscle mass was not gained. But, there's other studies that have been done that have shown, for some reason, all the endurance guys, they always wait an hour. It's kind of weird. So what I'm wondering is if people that are doing this research, like, sit down, take a step back. People are always in this, I got to publish. There's a real big publish or perish mentality in science, where it's like your bread and butter depends on you publishing. And so you're just constantly trying to get that data out there. But you really, I think, things are so complicated. Just sit down, take a look at everything that's out there and start to go, wait a minute, there's lots of little details that need to be considered to design this trial correctly. So I'm hoping that, at least for those people doing strength training, that they'll do one where they actually wait until an hour. Because there's been other studies where strength training in combination with cryotherapy done much later, even the next day, there were actually performance benefits. Like they were able to do more of those leg curl things. I don't know what they called.
Leg extensions?
Yes, leg extensions, those. So, I don't really know what's going on, but what I do know is that it seems as though it's very likely that doing the cryotherapy like immediately after. And now, then again, if you're talking about someone that's doing, like there's been studies that have been published showing that people that are doing 2 bouts of exercise, so they're like riding a bike and then they're waiting, 30 minutes, and then they go and run or something. If they do cold water immersion in between those, they actually have performance enhancements. But, if they wait, if they do it between 2 bouts of exercise, some of that's due to the fact that the cold water, it seems to improve heart rate variability. It's actually been shown to improve it by like 2 to 3 fold. So heart rate variability is the change in oscillation between heartbeats, and it's also people judge the heart recovery from a workout. So as soon as you're done with an intense workout, the ability of your heart rate to lower immediately within minutes, that's like a marker of heart rate variability. And it's supposed to be good because your heart's able to deal with these stressful changes, because when you're making cortisol or something, your heart starts racing more, or some of these other stress hormones. So it's been shown to improve that, and being able to have your heart rate slower right after a workout, and then you're immediately going to do a workout again, you can imagine there would be a performance enhancement with that.
So there's a difference in the physiological response between cold water immersion and cryotherapy, right?
Well, it depends. If you're there are differences in the ability for those 2 different modalities to extract heat from the body. If we're talking about submerging ourselves in cold water up to our shoulders, water or ice is a much better. It's much better at extracting heat from the body than air. But surface area also plays a role in the temperature change. So if you're sitting in cold water that's 57 degrees, that's not as cold as going into a minus 180 or whatever cryo chamber. But you can also sit in the cold water for a lot longer.
Yeah,
so
most guys do it for 15 minutes.
I think that there has been a study that compared the norepinephrine release. 20 seconds at 40-degree water up to the shoulders is comparable to 2 minutes at minus standard something 180, minus 180 Fahrenheit.
For norepinephrine.
For norepinephrine. But a lot of the effects are mediated from norepinephrine. But listen, 20 seconds at 40 degree versus 2 minutes. So imagine staying in the water for 5 minutes. And this has been shown. So if you have someone that stays in water, 57-degree water, for an hour, they increase their norepinephrine by 5-fold instead of 2-fold. Whoa. So you have a more robust response. So it could be good, but it could be bad. If you're talking about doing it right after a strength training session and jump into cold water for 5 minutes, that could have some, very potent anti-inflammatory effects.
So the best way to handle it would be to wait at least an hour.
I think. Yeah.
That makes sense. What about anti-inflammatory markers in the blood?
So there have been studies that have shown that cryotherapy lowers C-reactive protein, which would be an inflammatory marker, and then the glutathione-related enzymes going up, and also superoxide dismutase, that would be a marker for inflammation because those also decrease inflammation when you have more of those. So cryotherapy does, and then also there's been measurements of TNF-alpha going down, like I said. Also another marker that macrophages release, macrophage inhibitory protein or something. It's some inflammatory, molecule that's made. There's less of it when cold water. I can't remember if it's cold water immersion or cryotherapy, but it's cold exposure. So, and that was mediated through norepinephrine. Norepinephrine mediates a lot of stuff. It's mediating the brain effects. It's mediating the thermogenesis. It's anti-inflammatory. It's anti-pain. People get injected with norepinephrine in their spine to alleviate pain. Yes, because it's anti-inflammatory.
Wow. Jesus.
There's probably other things going on as well.
So, science, just the hard science. There's plenty of evidence that there's benefits to cryotherapy.
Oh, yeah.
So why would anybody write an article like that?
Like I said, there's the bad article that was the anabolic blunting effects, which was done immediately after exercise, which made a huge splash because it's like, whoa, your gains. And then you have the hardcore, very skeptical people that are like, well, the quality of data, Well, the thing is that there's a large body of data, and sometimes if you can't have a double-blinded placebo-controlled trial, then you have to look at mechanism. You have to look at animal studies combined with human studies. You have to understand what's going on. You can't refute the norepinephrine. We know that norepinephrine is doing all these things, So I think you just have to be very comprehensive, especially when there's the argument that there's no placebo-controlled trials or, it's too subjective. But there's lots of ways that it's not subjective, and this has been measured in people. People have measured C-reactive protein. They've measured these enzyme activities. They've measured these inflammatory molecules in people, also in animals. So I am confident when I say that there are absolutely health benefits from doing cold exposure for your brain, anti-inflammatory, for thermogenesis.